If you could like return from Mars and see how white people are being talked about now, it's like they can't do anything right. I don't think it's too dissimilar to how Jews were portrayed in Germany in the 1930s. You can't catch a break. You have to apologize. It's like, that's not in me.
All your mothers and your brothers and your sisters and your fathers and everybody walking this land, no matter your race, your creed, your tribe, whose nation you defend, with open hearts, open minds, lend a helping hand each time to the mothers and the brothers and the sisters and the fathers, everybody walking this land.
How do you feel about the political situation today?
So that slogan that says, let's make America great again, we already understood what it meant. Let's make America white again.
Yeah.
You know, he's just bringing out what a lot of people really feel. Yep.
Everybody walking this land.
There you go. What's 20 on the traffic highway?
This is 201 road. They're on the west side of the road.
Yeah.
Jeg er på jakt etter den amerikanske drømmen. En jakt som har ført meg hit til den meksikanske grensa. For det går ikke an å snakke om denne drømmen uten å snakke om hvem som får lov til å ta del i den, og hvem som ikke får lov til det.
So what just happened here?
What we just had was we had 8 individuals, or 8 illegal immigrants, coming to the United States. Majority of them are from Central America, Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. And there happens to be a few Mexican nationals in there as well.
Da jeg var liten amerikaner var ikke rase og identitet noe jeg tenkte særlig over. Når jeg i dag ser på klassebildet mitt fra Superior, Wisconsin, så skjønner jeg hvorfor. Som de fleste andre i Midtvesten var vi etterkommere av irer, tyskere, polakker og skandinaver. Det vil si de store bølgene av fattige europeiske lykkejegere som kom over Atlanteren på 1800- og tidlig 1900-tallet. Våre forfedre krysset havet for å komme til et land der alle hadde mulighet til å skape seg et bedre liv, uansett hvor de kom fra eller hvordan de så ut. Men etter hvert som jeg ble eldre forstod jeg at det i alle år har pågått en kamp om hvem som får ta del i denne drømmen. En nådeløs kamp som ofte handler om nettopp hvor du kommer fra og fargen på huden din. Og nå ser det ut som om denne kampen er i ferd med å rive USA i fillebiter.
All right. So why'd you go back to?
I got deported.
You got deported?
Yeah, Galveston County just caught me on some stupid charge.
Det er grytidlig morgen, og jeg har fått lov å følge Herman Rivera, en av nesten 17 000 Border Patrol-agenter som vokter grensa mot sør.
This sector where you're at right now is actually the busiest in the country, for that fact. As a matter
For
of-
crossing?
For crossing illegal immigrants. And actually it's also the busiest for narcotics.
And how many people will cross through here on a typical day?
Okay, so this sector is averaging just under 300 apprehensions a day. This same time last year, we were way over that, you know, for average day. Last year, we were averaging about 1,000 a day.
Yeah.
Grunnen til at det nå er færre som kommer over grensa, er en lovinnstramming for asylsøkere fra 2019. Den har ført til at titusener av mennesker bor i flyktningleirer på meksikansk side, i håp om å en dag få slippe inn i det forjettede landet i nord.
Can we go over and look
Sure,
at
we
the
can do that. So you just follow me this way right here?
The river's right here?
Yes, sir. As you can see, it's starting to get used again a little bit, but just to our right here, some old remnants, water bottles.
Here's tracks.
Right there.
Shoes.
You see they're coming up from the riverbank here. We treat people like we want to be treated ourselves. We treat them with respect and dignity. You know, rightfully so, they're human beings. So we're not going to exploit them like they were previously. They're not going to do anything to hurt them physically. You know, none of that. So, you know, there's a balancing act, if you will. There's enforcement and a humanitarian side as well. You do it legally, so you can just present that document and come to this country. You apply at the embassy, and you ask for asylum there at that, you know, at the embassy.
Would they get it, you think?
It just depends. You know, the asylum officer will determine, you know, that if they feel, yes, you do. You do qualify. Yes, you do, because you've gone through this and this happened to you. Yes. So then they start doing the paperwork, and it takes a period of time. Then, once that visa is issued, then they get they're able to come to this country legally.
I fjor ble under 1% av asylsøknadene innvilget. For noen amerikanere er dette en politisk seier. For andre er det en skamplett.
I'm going to go over there and I'm going to have people come up to me and tell me their stories. I'm going to listen to those stories and I'm not going to know what to say. If we don't bring it to their attention, the attention of this nation, this is going to go on and on and on and on.
Daglig krysser frivillige fra hele USA grensa for å hjelpe de som sitter fast på meksikansk side.
I was a high woman and a mother from my youth. Just over there is where we go through. For my children I did what I had to do. My family left Honduras when they killed the Sandinistas. We followed a coyote through the dust of Mexico. Every one of them except for me survived, and I am still alive.
I støvet og gjørma her, bare noen få meter fra USA, lever tusenvis av mennesker i håp om et bedre liv. En av de som hjelper dem er advokaten Jennifer Harbury. Etter at mannen hennes ble torturert i hjel av militærregimet i Guatemala på 90-tallet, har hun viet livet sitt til å hjelpe mennesker på flukt.
All along the Texas border into Mexico, all the way up to Laredo, is the state of Tamaulipas. 10-15 years ago, the cartels arrived and they own it. I count 50 to 80% have been either kidnapped or held at gunpoint at least once, if not 2 or 3 times, in Mexico, in Tamaulipas.
How would you describe the situation here in these refugee camps?
American Border Patrol agents are forbidden to come here. It's so dangerous. State Department, U.S. State Department has it classified as Category 4 level of danger. Only Afghanistan and Iraq are on that list.
Are there cartel people watching us right now?
Probably. I'd be surprised if they weren't. They're everywhere.
Disse mektige kriminelle kartellene lever hovedsakelig av narkostrømmen nordover inn i USA. Men de utnytter også desperate folk på flukt, og tjener store summer på menneskesmugling, utpressing og kidnapping. Noe som gjør det nærmest umulig for menneskene her å vende tilbake til hjemlandene sine. De er rett og slett stuck her.
So this is the Rio Grande, the border river.
But it looks like you should be able to wade, but people drown constantly because there's terrible currents underneath the surface of the water.
Is this where that man
Oscar
drowned with
and his little girl? Yes, they had gone to the bridge and were told they couldn't cross. They had to get on the wait list. And they checked out the wait list, and it was 3 or 4 months. And they had no food, no money, no nothing. This tent city did not exist yet. And it looked like a creek. And the gangsters were here. He was scared for the safety of his wife and child. He didn't think he could just camp out here. It's way too dangerous. So he took a look at the creek and he tried to swim. And you saw the photograph. He could swim. It's just the currents are that bad underneath. I'm just trying to find my client over here. I've got some papers for. Mi favorito. No, de se puede quedar. Yo.
Thomas.
Roxana.
Roxana?
Roxana es una enfermera.
You're a nurse?
They had to leave because of all the gang violence and stuff.
Where, Guatemala?
El Salvador.
El Salvador? Hola. ¿Cómo te llamas?
Decirle, Brandon. 2.
Brandon.
3 años.
3 años. Me llamo 3 años.
They were kidnapped when they got sent back. Gangs.
The whole family was kidnapped by gangs?
Todos ustedes 5.
Sí, los 5.
All 5 of them. They sent their once they came in from Reynosa and got sent back, they sent their girls across. It's Sophie's choice. They didn't want to, and they'd been crying for weeks, but they sent them across.
Y entonces tomamos la decisión, aunque me dolió separarme de mis hijas, pero prefiero que estén bien allá y no estar aquí en peligro.
I didn't want it. We just decided we can't have them be here in danger, and it nearly killed us to send them back across, but I mean over to the other side all alone, but they did. They sent their girls all alone.
They made it across and through?
If they're minors, the U.S. cannot turn them back.
So where are they now?
¿Dónde están ahorita?
Todavía están en la casa hogar.
They're in one of the centers for minors. Hey, mamá, un buen mamá, siempre mejor de todas las mamás eres. Un mamá más fuerte no hay. There's not a stronger mom than this. She kept a little boy, but she thought her girls were too much at risk. So we have a lot of nerve complaining about people who are trying to save their children's lives by running up here. For a long time, Trump and Border Patrol people, I would fight them every time I crossed because they'd say, well, they're terrible parents putting their children in this dangerous position. And it's like, what they've left behind is way worse than anything we're seeing up here. They are incredibly courageous parents, and they're hanging onto their children and even sending them alone to the bridge. So hopefully they will survive even when these people are killed.
How do you feel about the wall?
Well, I think it's atrocious.
Why?
And it's also stupid. I mean, the wall is not built to keep out criminals and drug lords. Those people have so much money they can buy a passport, buy a visa, and buy a jumbo jet. That's just ridiculous. That wall is built to keep out the victims of the cartels and the victims of army repression, because we're racist and we don't want people of color coming here. There's no wall up at the Canadian border.
De aller første grensegjerdene mellom USA og Mexico ble satt opp av bønder for å stoppe kveg på vandring. På 70-tallet ville president Jimmy Carter bygge gjerder for å stagge arbeidsinnvandring, og siden den gang har alle presidenter satt opp sperringer og murer langs grensa. De har bare ikke snakket så høyt om det. Donald Trump derimot har faktisk ikke fått bygget så mye ny mur, men til gjengjeld så har han snakket veldig, veldig høyt om den.
We're going to build a wall. It's going to be a real wall. We're going to build a wall on our border, and that wall is going to be a very, very effective real wall.
So this is a wall, or this is the wall?
This right here has been in existence for about 10 years now. It's
10 years. So this is Obama's wall.
Correct. This is part of Obama's wall. It's been great. There's a lot of misconceptions that walls don't work, and that's not the case. Walls do work.
You have ancestry on this side of the border. Do you feel any kinship to the people that you apprehend?
Well, I will say is that our first job, what I'm hired to do, is to try to keep America safe. Try to, follow the law, follow the rules that are set. So what I do is just enforce, what's in the law.
Ja, Herman gjør bare jobben sin. Og jeg opplevde at han og kollegaene viste ektefølt sympati med menneskene de stoppet langs grensa. Lovene de håndhever har imidlertid blitt strengere. Siden 2018 har alle som krysser grensa uten visum, inkludert de som skal melde seg som asylsøkere, blitt definert som lovbrytere. Foreldre ble satt i fengsel, og barna deres plassert i egne interneringssentre. Jennifer fikk tak i et lydopptak fra et sånt senter. Og det skulle få oppmerksomhet verden over.
Bueno, aquí tenemos una orquesta. ¿De dónde son ustedes? ¿Y tú?
Guatemala.
I mean, we're just like, you hear that in the night, you run to that child, because you can tell they're not throwing a temper tantrum. They're not begging, they're not just cranky. It's like, those are children in danger, right? So you run to help them.
That changed policy?
It did in that case. And also stories coming out about conditions at the initial processing place. No medical care, 6 children had died in 6 months. That horrified people.
But then people would say, yeah, that tape was heart-wrenching, but do you want open borders? What do you want?
Well, no one's saying open borders. It has to be open for refugees who are in danger of being killed back home. That's international law. It's United States federal law. That's the law. That's not open borders. This kid was so smart.
How old is that kid?
He's 10.
Men de fleste som innvandrer ulovlig til USA kommer ikke over Rio Grande-elva her nede. For hele 2/3 av alle illegale innvandrere kommer nemlig med fly som turister og blir igjen i landet etter at turistvisumet har utløpt. Og en del av dem er hvite i huden. Dem hører vi ikke så mye om. Den amerikanske innvandringsdebatten er kompleks og veldig polarisert. Men hvor mye handler egentlig om innvandring? Og hvor mye handler egentlig om hudfarge? Og apropos hudfarge og tilhørighet. En av gruppene som har vært i USA aller lengst er den afroamerikanske befolkningen. Og det er en gruppe som ikke kom hit som lykkejegere.
Folkens, jeg er på historisk grunn. Hiphop-kulturens krybbe. En av de mest kjente svarte gettoene i USA, nemlig The Bronx, litt nord for Manhattan.
What's up, fella?
Hey there.
Oh, you're rolling already.
You're rolling. Are you Hawk?
Yes, sir.
What were you just listening to when you drove in here?
Oh, fuck the police. NWA.
Fuck the police.
Fuck the police.
Is that your sentiment?
Always.
Hawk Newsom er en lederskikkelse i Black Lives Matter-bevegelsen.
Nice coat.
Thank you.
Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter!
I løpet av årets lange, varme sommer har Black Lives Matter gått fra å være en nasjonal grasrotbevegelse mot politivold til å bli et internasjonalt kamprop mot rasisme.
No justice! No peace!
Well, you know, when I hear the word Bronx, I think about hip-hop, but I also think about crime. Is there a lot of crime here?
When you think about crime, you think about poverty. You think about people starving, their lights being turned off, them being kicked out of their homes. You think about things like that. You? Ain't nothing, black man. When you think about the Bronx, me personally, I think about predatory policing. I see people doing things here every day that they wouldn't get arrested for if they were white in Midtown Manhattan, right? So this park, now that white folks are moving into this neighborhood, white people sit out there and have picnics with wine. But if there's a group of black and Dominican people playing dominoes, older men, 60, 70, just passing time, and one of them's drinking a beer, they'll get a ticket. And if they don't have ID, they'll get taken to jail. Hey!
Hey, sweetie.
How you feeling?
I'm blessed.
Everything good?
Yes.
Right on, right on. All right, y'all. Black Lives Matter is our challenging the United States of America and many governments across the globe and saying, hey, our lives matter. Our lives have value too. Like the average person might say, yes, you as a black person, your life has value. But the government doesn't tell us that. The government tells the police that they can kill us and get away with it.
Right. I know I can't breathe. I can't breathe. You're talking and you're I can't breathe, man. Please.
Protest and growing national outcries continue over the death of George Floyd. Last night,
Du svart I dagens Amerika, det 2,5 gang større sjanse for at du blir drept av politiet enn om du hvit. Dette forskerne stort sett enige om. Men hvorfor det sånn? Mange mener det skyldes rasisme I politiet. Mens andre viser til at svarte overrepresentert I kriminalstatistikken, og derfor havner oftere I klammeri med politiet. Kanskje, men dette forteller nok ikke hele historien. Man vet for eksempel at bruken av illegale rusmidler like utbredt blant hvite som svarte amerikanere. Likevel blir svarte mye oftere ransaket, pågrepet og straffet for dette. Denne typen forskjeller kalles systemisk rasisme.
So when I talk to some people, including a black guy I spoke with today, he says that there's not systemic racism in America, and that you're laughing. Is it that ridiculous?
It is.
So it's rigged against black people. Is that what you're saying? This society?
This society benefits off the poverty of black people, the oppression of black people. Police are the most upfront, in-your-face enforcers of systemic oppression, right? Of white supremacy. So that's why we are so head-on in challenging them, because they are the defenders of this system. The FBI issued a report saying that law enforcement was infiltrated by members of white supremacist groups. No one did anything about it. And so, in essence, folks who hate black people have a badge and a gun, which is a license to hunt and kill black people.
I've checked out some statistics, and one analyst, he concludes that black man as a 2.5 man has
twice as likely
to get killed by a policeman than a white man. However, when you look at the numbers on income, you see that the same odds apply to poor white people too. Mm-hmm. It's just a poverty thing that makes you exposed to being killed by law enforcement.
Now, when you look at both black people and white people being murdered by police at similar rates who are impoverished, right? Look at who has the better opportunity to escape that poverty. Study after study shows that blacks are discriminated against in banking, in receiving loans, right? That they're discriminated against in housing opportunities. They're discriminated against in the college admissions process. So white people innately have more of an opportunity to escape poverty.
You think so?
Than black people. These are facts. Black people never received anything after slavery. We were promised 40 acres and a mule, which was property, which was key,
famous,
right? And we never received it.
When you say reparations, what do you, I mean, specifically, what do you put in? A check or
a check?
Oh, yeah.
Check or property, right? Give people money, give them their property. There are businesses that still exist that made their money off slavery, right? There was never any amends made. It's America's original sin.
Slaveriet utvilsomt et enormt arr på den amerikanske sjela. Og selv om slaveri har eksistert over hele verden, det amerikanske slaveriet litt ekstra perverst, mener jeg da.
Uncle Jim was born a slave and 5 times sold in slavery.
Fordi USA var et land med en moderne grunnlov skrevet av opplyste og frihetselskende menn, som likevel eide andre menn, kvinner og barn, som om de var gårdsdyr. Og det var dette slaveriet som langt på vei fikk fart på den industrielle revolusjonen, og dermed bidro til den enorme velstanden vi alle nyter godt av den dag i dag. Black Lives Matter og mange med dem krever at amerikanske myndigheter skal gjøre opp for seg etter århundrer med slaveri og diskriminering. Argumentet går ut på at svarte ikke har fått ta del i den rikdommen de selv har vært med på å skape, men I stedet har blitt holdt tilbake av rasistisk lovgivning og diskriminerende praksis. Men langt fra alle svarte amerikanere ser USA på samme måte som Hawke. En av dem den unge samfunnsdebattanten og filosofen Coleman Hughes. I 2019 holdt Coleman et innlegg I Kongressen der han argumenterte imot å gi erstatning til svarte amerikanere født etter 1964.
Racism is a bloody stain on this country's history, and I consider our failure to pay reparations directly to freed slaves after the Civil War to be one of the greatest injustices ever perpetrated by the U.S. government. But I worry that our desire to fix the past compromises our ability to fix the present.
I testified against the idea of reparations to all descendants of slaves. I think it's a bad idea. I can support reparations to someone like my grandfather who grew up under Jim Crow segregation law. The question is whether someone like me needs reparations or is owed reparations. And it's part of a broader problem I see, which is having a perverse relationship with the past.
What does perverse relationship with the past mean?
It means you're looking for apologies for past harms. You're seeking to fill a bottomless pit with political remedies. You're seeking to fill what is in essence a spiritual hole with politics, and it will never work. Every time you get something, you will reject it as not enough. We had Martin Luther King Day as a national holiday to honor the most important figure in the civil rights movement. We had a national apology for lynching in 2004. Each time this thing happened, it seemed like a big deal at the time, but in retrospect, we say, it's nothing. We want something more. So at some point we have to say, we are all Americans here, and we have to view our relationship to our nation in terms that aren't trying to endlessly compensate for the past.
President Johnson calls for all Americans to back what he calls a turning point in history. The House passes the measure.
Først 100 år etter at slaveriet ble formelt avskaffet, ble de rasistiske Jim Crow-lovene endelig forkastet.
Its purpose is not to punish. Its purpose is not to divide, but to end divisions. Divisions which have lasted all too long.
In his speech, he said, we want to wash away the scars of slavery. But the thing about a scar is you actually can't wash it away. It stays with you, period.
Is there any way to mend them or to heal them in any way?
The scar's never going to go away. You have to start from today, future-oriented, and say, how can we make our outcomes better? You cannot focus on the past.
Men hvor klart egentlig skillet mellom fortid og nåtid? Altså, storebroren min ble født I et USA der det var rene apartheidlover som hindret amerikanere å bo der de ville, gå på skole der de ville, starte næringsvirksomhet og ta opp banklån kun basert på hudfarge. I 1950 var medianinntekten til svarte amerikanere halvparten av medianinntekten til hvite. Og det den jaggu fremdeles. Også selve demokratiet preges den dag I dag av etterdønninger fra slaveriet. I mange svarte områder finnes det ordninger som gjør det vanskeligere å stemme ved valg, og valgdistrikt blir inndelt på tidvis ganske bizarre måter for å svekke svarte amerikaneres stemmekraft.
So we did this on Martin Luther King
there you go.
birthday.
Wow, look at that. That's you.
Yes indeed. Malcolm X is my hero. He preached self-respect. He preached self-determination, and pretty much us fighting back against this system that consistently and systematically oppresses us. So that's why I love Malcolm. Like, you believe in peaceful protests, you think people should protest peacefully.
Yeah.
Right. When black people had the most wealth accumulation, when they made the most progress, was during the 1960s when black people were lighting this country on fire. When there were riots happening. There has to be a threat of violence.
Really?
Like, America has to fear that we will burn this bitch down.
Do you have a gun? I mean, do you have guns?
Several. Because if you were enslaved in this country, you'd be a damn fool to give up your guns. Meanwhile, there's white folk in militias and across the country who are saying there's no way in the world I'd give up my guns. So enemies of black people are vowing death before giving up their guns. And we're going to give up our guns? Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
What do you think is the biggest divider in America today? The biggest division, is that race or class today, 2020?
Class. Because it's the classism that breeds the racism, right? It's the necessity to keep people poor and working for you so that you can keep all of the wealth. The biggest trick that the Republican Party played on white people, poor white people, is making them believe that they are for them.
For en stund siden gjorde Hawk noe som ga meg litt troen tilbake på det amerikanske fellesskapsprosjektet. Han sto på en scene og snakket direkte til oppildnede Trump-tilhengere. Dette gjorde han i en tid sterkt preget av såkalt identitetspolitikk, som betyr at folk mobiliserer på hver sin tue basert på kategorier som etnisitet, seksualitet og kjønn, i stedet for mer tradisjonelle kategorier som høyre, venstre, klasse og nasjon.
I don't think my Bible is any different from yours when it says love thy neighbor.
We were protesting and they invited us on stage. I think they thought that we would get booed or that we would make asses of ourselves.
But that didn't happen. What did you say to them that that appealed so much to them?
I spoke to them like they were people. Right.
If we really want to make America great, we do it together.
Det sjelden kost nå for tida å se sinte amerikanere med såpass forskjellig ståsted faktisk finne sammen.
Man, if I could inspire black people to stand up for themselves and create common ground with poor white people, we could really reshape this country. Because at the end of the day, it's the ruling class that has us at war against each other because they want to keep all of the benefits of America. They want to keep all of the money.
So where do you see America going next 30 years?
I'll say young people and activists like myself are reshaping America. But what we have to do is ensure that when these changes start to come, that black people are not left out.
Det ikke bare minoritetene som bedriver identitetspolitikk nå for tiden. For man kan definitivt også snakke om en hvit identitetspolitikk. I alle år har nedsettende begreper som white trash og rednecks blitt brukt om fattige hvite amerikanere. Men med åra har noen begynt å omfavne disse skjellsordene. En av dem forfatteren Jim Goad, som på slutten av 90-tallet utga kultklassikeren The Redneck Manifesto. Der hevder han at den hvite underklassen har blitt syndebukker for stort sett alt som har gått galt med USA.
The redneck is the only cardboard figure left standing in our ethnic shooting gallery. All the other targets have been quietly removed in deference to unwritten laws of cultural sensitivity. White trash are open game. The trailer park has become the media's cultural toilet, the only acceptable place to dump one's racist inclinations. Jesus Christ.
Jeg brevvekslet litt med Jim på 90-tallet, den gang vi begge tilhørte rockeundergrunnen. Siden har vi tatt forskjellige veivalg, Jim og jeg. Og i dag blir han, noe motvillig riktignok, ansett som en slags ideologisk gudfar for den høyre-radikale alt-right-bevegelsen.
Every culture I've ever examined has the stereotype of poor rural people. And it's specifically kind of a Southern term, but I never called myself a redneck. I'm working class white. I've been called white trash. I grew up in a brick row home in Philly. My dad was a plumber, worked himself to death. White trash is a term slave owners invented, and they encouraged black slaves to mock the poor whites who couldn't even get it together to be on the plantation.
So it's divide and conquer.
That's what I think. Yeah.
Is it still that way?
I think it's entirely that way. But it's hard, You have black people that have been brought up just trained to resent me just for the color of my skin. And, you know, if you want to talk about, well, I'm reaping all the benefits of slavery, it's like, he's not. He's living in this country too, where the conditions, he'll live 25 years longer with 10 times the income he would if he was in Africa. Because that's what I write about, is guilt and who gets blamed. Okay, if it's a racist country, why aren't Asians getting shot at the same level that blacks are? Why are they actually being incarcerated less than whites are?
But for black, I mean, you're still associated with poverty and slavery, still to this day.
Phenotypically, but at least in public, they are absolutely worshipped. You can't say anything about them without having your life destroyed. I even said in that book that the biggest story of the 90s wasn't racism, it was outsourcing. Because that's when they started dismantling the entire American industrial base.
Moving factories from
America to America, to China, to Southeast Asia. And I believe back then that racial divisions were imaginary and created by the elites. The only thing I've changed is I think racial divisions are natural. I think people are tribal.
Do you feel that white poor people in America, they're being blamed for stuff that they didn't cause?
The thing that's changed since I wrote that book was it was just poor whites who were being blamed then. Now it's just whiteness. But if you could return from Mars and see how white people are being talked about now, it's like they can't do anything right, or at least as white, unless apologize. I don't think it's too dissimilar to how Jews were portrayed in Germany in the 1930s, or how other groups that were being set up for slaughter are being portrayed. You can't catch a break. You have to apologize. It's like, that's not in me.
Ja, å sammenligne hvite amerikanere med jøder I 30-tallets Tyskland jo ganske frisk bruk av offerrollen. Men Jim spissformulerer her noe jeg tror mange hvite amerikanere kjenner på, nemlig et slags krav om at de skal skamme seg.
Some people associate you with the alt-right movement.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I think there were just some overlaps as far as irreverence and noticing the double standards. What I never claimed to be was white pride. And it's not even, people get me wrong, it's not, well, I think that's evil and bad. It's just not my style.
What do you feel about, do you want a white ethnicity? Right?
I don't like people. I mean, I want to...
You don't want a state?
I want more space between me and these houses. Yeah, I don't want to belong to anything.
Det slår meg at Jim Gold og Hawk Newsom faktisk skjønt enige om én ting, og det at splid mellom hvite og svarte noe den lille eliten som eier Amerika har kommet meget godt ut av. Mange historikere mener at vi kan spore dette skillet helt tilbake til Amerikas barndom og det såkalte Bacon-opprøret. I de tidlige koloniene var tvangsarbeid vanlig. Flertallet av europeerne som krysset havet signerte frivillig på slaveaktige kontrakter for å unnslippe sult og nød I gamlelandet. Andre var krigsfanger og straffedømte, og noen ble rett og slett kidnappet hjemme I Europa. Da de første afrikanske slavene kom til koloniene, ble de satt til å jobbe side om side med disse ufrie europeerne på tobakksåkerne, der de alle ble utsatt for umenneskelig brutal behandling. I 1676 oppstod en konflikt mellom plantasjeeiere og indianere I Virginia, og en milits bestående av både hvite og svarte tjenere og slaver benyttet anledningen til å sammen brenne ned hovedstaden Jamestown. Plantasjeeierne ble vettskremte. De innførte derfor lover som ga de hvite tvangsarbeiderne enkelte privilegier, mens undertrykkelsen av de svarte ble verre. Og fra da av har splittende rasistisk retorikk vært en del av maktspillet I USA.
And I say segregation now, segregation tomorrow, and segregation forever.
They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists.
So, but you voted for Trump, right? How do you feel now it's gone, 3 years have passed?
Anything I voted for. And
What did you vote for?
I voted for American nationalism, economic protectionism, if we had to raise tariffs as high as cornfields to protect jobs here. They talk about immigration, America's a nation of immigrants. What's changed now, when you had Italians coming over 100 years ago, they were ashamed to be Italian and they tried to learn English not hostile to the idea of the nation they were moving to. A lot of the immigrants coming now are seeking vengeance. That changes it.
Really?
Well, you have especially Mexican immigrants. There's the Aztlan movement. They're under the impression they owned half of America, but it was stolen from them. It's the Reconquista. We're going to reconquer.
But most Mexicans in America just go to work and work long hours. I mean, they're not. When
But
do
they're
they do?
also,
When
like,
do they do revenge in the weekends?
Intensely segregated. This is what I wonder too. Like Hispanics, I think at this point are like 17% of the population. There are more Hispanics in America than blacks.
Og for mange hvite, konservative amerikanere er dette en forsmak på en framtid de frykter, nemlig et Amerika der hvite ikke lenger er i flertall. Hvis utviklingen fortsetter som nå, vil det skje innen år 2050. Og her i Texas er de hvite allerede i mindretall.
Hey Mark.
En av dem er fembarnsmoren Tasha. Hun er dattera til kusina mi og er samboer med Mark, som er latino.
We're not that far from the Mexican border here. Do you notice that?
Oh yeah, for sure.
How?
Especially here, the white culture is the minority here, very much so. The Hispanic culture dominates this area. Oh, I don't want the ice cream. That's yours. I remember growing up, the whites dominated everything, and that was a big deal. And people in their white power and this and that. And it's not like that anymore. Now, with us being this close to the border, me being white and Mark being Hispanic, as a couple, we still get ugly looks.
Really?
Yes.
From who? From white people or Hispanic?
It's more Hispanic people.
Oh, yeah?
To them, it's kind of like you're raised to stick to your own.
Now that being white here in southern Texas is a minority, is that something that worries you?
You know, you always hear people say, oh, well, they're taking our jobs, or they're doing this, or they're doing that. But that's anywhere you go. If people migrate in, they're going to take jobs that you want. You're going to have people that are going to do the job for $10 cheaper than what even Mark would do it for, you know, or $5 cheaper than what they can pay me to do the job for. And I don't blame them for coming over here. You want to come over here, you want to make money, send it home to your family. You're doing what anybody wants to do, take care of their family. More power to you. I don't have a problem in the world, but do it the right way. Go apply for citizenship, get your work visa, do whatever you have to do.
So Olivia here with a white mom and Hispanic dad, isn't she the future of America?
Oh, yeah. She is. I think there's a lot of kids that are like that. The other two, Kim Brianne and Aiden, are the same way. Both of them their dads are Hispanic, and, you know, I'm white, so 3 out of the 5 are mixed. But something I've always taught my kids is love has no race. There's no color to it. There's no religion to it. You know, there's no gender. You love who you love, and you can't help that.
Bubba?
Yes, he's so smart.
Yeah.
He's gonna be 16 this month. You're gonna just miss his birthday.
Hos Tasha, Mark og ungeflokken lever min barndoms fargeblinde amerikanske drøm videre. Her skiller ikke kjærligheten mellom raser, og det gjør heller ikke fattigdommen.
Say hello, Olivia. They want to talk to you. Yeah.
For etter å ha møtt både brune, hvite og svarte amerikanere som sliter på grunn av kronisk pengemangel, er det litt kvalmt å se direktøren for USAs største bank hive seg på sommerens protestbølge mot rasisme og urettferdighet ved å knele foran et svært pengehvelv. USA omtales ofte som et splittet stammesamfunn. Men hva med den opprinnelige amerikanske stammen? De som var her aller først? Jeg er midt i Navajo-nasjonen. Dette er et av USAs drøyt 300 reservater, områder som indianerne ble avspist med for å rydde plass til den amerikanske drømmen.
Oh, there's a guy in the back here too.
Lawrence.
Hi, Lawrence.
Lardell.
Hey, Lardell.
Etter at europeere brakte med seg sykdom, kriger, slaveri og rene massakre, utgjør USAs urfolk i dag mindre enn 2% av befolkningen. Og den amerikanske drømmen har særdeles dårlige kår på karrige reservater som dette.
Personally, I see it as we're used to it. You know, we've been put aside and forgotten about, you know, not only like the Navajos, but like all the other indigenous tribes. You know, they were set in their own reservations and then just forgotten about. Poverty is a real big issue. Not a lot of homes on the reservation have running water and electricity. So the residents will actually have to go out, haul their own water, and use lanterns, candles, flashlights, you know, make do with what they have. You know, we get a lot of, especially in the winter, we get a lot of deaths by freezing.
People freeze to death?
Yeah, people freeze to death. So it's harsh out here. A lot of families, they're torn apart from alcoholism. A lot of children are taken to CPS, Child Protective Services, because they have families that just constantly drink. And it's a shame, really.
I know I don't want to live on the reservation my whole life. It would be nice to leave the reservation and, I guess you could say, be successful in life and then come back later and live on the reservation.
I believe that would be the American dream, as they put it, you know, to leave some place like the reservation and go make something of themselves, go better your life.
I don't really want to stay here that much.
You want to get away?
Yeah, just go out, explore, see what's out there.
So we're gonna see you play. I've seen some pictures of you, and you know what? It looks very Norwegian, your image. So cultural appropriation, huh?
Well, we are inspired by a lot of Norwegian bands, and from our understanding, they like to look like dead bodies. That's the corpse paint.
Yeah.
On our side, cultural-wise, there are evil entities around here that we call skinwalkers or Yanagloshis.
They're basically like witches. Yeah.
And they can shapeshift into coyotes, wolves, horses. There's some horses over there. So they could be skinwalkers. We don't know.
Denne reisen og menneskene jeg møter har gjort det tydelig for meg at amerikanere av alle farger har mye mer til felles enn det som skiller dem. Og jeg frykter at alt fokuset på gruppeidentitet og rasisme noen ganger fungerer som en lynavleder for de økonomiske forskjellene i USA. For mens listene over USAs rikeste og mektigste nesten utelukkende består av hvite menn, er arbeidsplasser og militærsykehus fargerike fellesskap, der svarte, hvite og brune amerikanere sammen svetter, blør og dør for landet sitt. Hudfargen er forskjellig, og ja, det finnes absolutt kulturelle forskjeller, men når jobbene, pengene og mulighetene forsvinner, så er problemene stort sett de samme. Fra disse uramerikanske identitetsspøkelsene skal vi i neste episode ta turen til hjertelandet her i denne gedigne, slitne plantasjen vi kaller Amerika.
Our preferred drug of choice in I was Busch Light and meth. Our hopelessness and pain is manifested in meth.
But still, you were one of the biggest distributors in the United States for a while, weren't you?
Absolutely.
I didn't want to be poor. I didn't want to be somebody's bitch. That ain't me.
American dream for me is not the white picket fence, but for my kids to be healthy and to become a productive member of society.
That people will be treated as people and not as pawns in some historical fairy tale about oppression and suffering.
The American dream, to me, has always been the American nightmare to people who look like me.
And influencing other people into making their dream a reality.